Am I on? Yep. Well, I'm grateful that you're here tonight. We've had some good messages already. Hard to follow, talking about the permanent permanence of the kingdom at 10 o'clock. And I know what it was about. What was your P at 11? Nick? What was the title at 11?
Kingdom preparedness.
Preparedness of the kingdom. So we've had two kingdom messages. Glad you're here. I'm excited to be here. I hope this time together will be well spent and pleasing to God. We'll be in Matthew 5 to 7. We'll be joining Jesus at the mountainside for a few moments. As we talked about the kingdom this morning, how it is a permanent kingdom and it's a kingdom for prepared people. Well, one of the ways that Jesus prepares his people is by telling his people about the king and what they must do. So tonight and tomorrow night, I want to look at these chapters as it relates to the kingdom. Now let me get my timer here so that the trap door doesn't close on me. So if you're in Matthew 5, we're actually going to start in Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4. And what I want to do tonight and tomorrow night is go over the message of the kingdom, message of the sermon as it relates to the king and his people. And so what do we have, what do we see about the king of the people? So Matthew chapter 5, join me there. Matthew 5 and verse 1, and seeing the mountain, he went up on a mountain, and when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Jesus is on the mountain here, and Jesus is the king on the mountain, and all of his disciples come to him. Give me just a moment. Feels like there's not enough space for everything. I guess I'll have to stand here. Actually, this would make more sense if I can you put the computer back on here. Sorry, I thought that was gonna work. We're getting off to a sloppy start here. I'm sorry. So Matthew 5 starts this way. Actually, Matthew 5 depicts Jesus going up on the mountain and teaching his disciples. And he opens his mouth and taught them in verse 2, talking about the kingdom and the qualities of people who will be in the kingdom. But before this, the king shows his authority by calling his disciples. In Matthew 4:18 to 20, While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. Jesus says in Matthew 4 to his future disciples, "Come and follow me." And they left their nets and followed. When the king speaks, people listen. "Follow me." And immediately they left their nets and they followed. This doesn't happen just once. For in the next section, we have James, the son of Zebedee, and John. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them immediately. They left the boat and their father and followed him. When the king speaks, there's action. When Jesus called John and James, they left. They picked up whatever they were doing. Actually, they didn't pick it up. They just got up and left their father in the boat. This is a testament of the king. Then we get on the mountain, and in Matthew chapter 5, it is bookended. Well, I guess I missed the slide. But in Matthew 5, Jesus went up on the mountain and was seated to his disciples. And after this great sermon, this is the conclusion that the people gathered. In Matthew 7, 28 and 29, when Jesus finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as their scribes. Notice, they were amazed. What the king said on the mountain was amazing, was transformative. It was new. He taught like nobody else, like none of the leaders. He has authority. He spoke with authority on this mountain. So what did the king say? Why was the audience in Matthew 7 so impressed with Jesus and his message? Well, let's see. He opened his mouth and taught them, saying, there's the slide, Matthew 5, 1 and 2, he begins teaching. And so what he teaches is amazing, transformative, and demands a full, undivided attention. And when he teaches, we need to listen. Well, look at Matthew chapter 7. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of the Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name do many wondrous works. Uh, do many wondrous works in your name. Listen to me. Matthew 7 says, look, if you want to be in this kingdom, it's not going to be everybody who says, Lord, I want you as my king. No. Not everybody who says, Lord, Lord, I want you, gets to be a part of what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is special, and what I'm doing is for a special people. It's for those who do the will of the Father who is in heaven. See, the king's subjects don't just give him lip service, they do what the king says to do. When he teaches, he says, do my will, and I will be your king, you will be my subjects. He continues, then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. See, the ones who say, Lord, Lord, have we not done all of these things in your name? He says, I never knew you. And many people say, he's saying that because these people boast in their works. They're saying, look how much I've done. No. Jesus says exactly why. He says, depart. What's the problem? They didn't do the will. Notice, who will enter the kingdom? Those who listen to King Jesus, doing the will of the Father. The one who does the will of the Father will not hear, depart from me. Instead, they'll be accepted and be welcomed. And Matthew 25 would say, welcome in, enter into the joy of your Lord. When the King teaches, you listen, you give ear. At the end of this sermon, Jesus says this, everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. Jesus says, everybody who hears these words of mine, you have to hear the king. When the king decrees, you gotta be there. And notice what he says next. You have to do my words. You want to be a part of Jesus' kingdom? It's going to be by doing the will of the king, doing what the king commands, what the king decrees. Those who hear Jesus and do what he decrees are like a wise man who builds his house on the rock, a firm foundation, so that when the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew, it did not fall. Because it's founded on what the king says, what the king does, who the king is. Do you want to be part of my kingdom? Jesus says, listen to me. Jesus says, hear me. Do what I say. And then you'll be founded on the rock. You'll have a sturdy place in this kingdom. In contrast, in Matthew 7:26 through 27, everyone who does not hear these, everyone who hears these words, you have to hear again, and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat against the house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. What was the difference between the fool and the wise person? One listened to King Jesus. He says, jump. The wise man says, how high, Lord? The king says, run. How far, Lord? The wise man built his house on some other foundation. He does not do the words of Jesus, and it ends in disaster. He's not building on the foundation of the king. You know, the kingdom, being part of the kingdom, starts here. Listening to the words of Jesus, because he's worth listening to. Remember at the end of the sermon, they're astonished at his teaching because he teaches with one having authority and not as their religious leaders. He's worth listening to. So if you want to have a big fall, don't listen to Jesus. But if you want a sure foundation, if you want an abundant life, listen to the King. Listen to the King. Listen to the King because the King has a mission. He tells the Jews, do not think I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law till all is accomplished. The King's mission is to fulfill God's law, to bring it to completion, to fulfill all the promises of God from the Old Testament. The King has a mission. Are you going to be a part of it? Are you going to submit to the King? Are you going to be a part of his kingdom? A kingdom that is far better than the law of Moses. In fact, the King has written a new decree in which he fulfills the law and the prophets. The King has a mission. He's also says to the Jews there in Matthew 5:19, therefore whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be great in the kingdom of heaven. I am on a mission. I'm on a mission to fulfill God's law. But he says to those under the old law, you gotta do it first. I'm gonna fulfill it, but you're still under it. And if you obey the law that you're under, you're going to join me in that kingdom. See, Jews and Gentiles can still, Jews can still be part of the kingdom of heaven. You'll be called the greatest. The king has authority. When he speaks, listen. The king's on a mission. Will you be a part of the mission? And part of the mission, lastly, is to provide for his subjects. Matthew 6:11. In the model prayer, Jesus says, in this manner pray, give us this day our daily bread. In Matthew 6:31 and 32, Jesus gives an outline. Jesus says, don't worry about anything. I got you back. Don't worry about what you will eat, what you will drink, or what you will wear, for all of these the Gentiles seek. Don't worry about tomorrow, for the king will provide for his subjects. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to put on your body. I will provide for you. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Do you want to be part of the kingdom? Seek it. I'm going to provide for you. We have a king that has authority. And so don't be anxious for tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. The king will provide. Seek those things that are ahead. The king is great. The king has a mission. He says, I'm going to fulfill everything written about me. The king provides for his subjects. I'm going to take care of you. And the king says, come with me. That's what Matthew chapters 5 through 7 reveal about the king of the people. But what about the people of the king? Well, you're going to have to come back tomorrow at 6:30. Let's sing.